So realistically, if someone was brand new, how far away are people right now from never doing real estate to acquiring their first property?
It really depends on how you get the education. We have this coaching program. If you went into something like that, probably a couple months, you're ready to make your first purchase. Maybe less than that even.
Hey guys, this is D.
And this is Keith. This is the Defiant Life podcast, where we
defy the laws of mediocrity. We got there. We did it. Yeah. Swiper, no swiping. Oh man, I miss those old. One of my favorite shows to watch was Arthur, and it's officially off. Like they're not making any new episodes anymore.
I ever saw Arthur.
Really? With the aardvark? With DW and them? Oh man,
too old
Buster.
for that. Mm-hmm.
That was your age group, GPTV. What you mean too old for that? I grew up watching that and reading the books.
I don't know about that.
This dude, right? Thank you.
That's Morgan's age group.
And my age group. I'm older than you, bruh. Anyway, so today on the table, we're going to be talking about, we had a couple of questions from our comments in the peanut gallery asking if they could invest in real estate on their own. And I said, so what do you mean by that? And they said, well, I like it. I want to do it. Obviously, I want to have passive income, but can I afford to do it? You know, that was kind of the question that was on the table. Let's kind of unpack that a little bit and talk about what it takes financially to get into multifamily property. And then also another question was also when I'm starting, is it better for me to start with single family, which seems more practical, than starting in multifamily? You know, just kind of, what kind of ebb and flow through that?
Okay, well, you definitely don't have to have money. It's easier if you do, but you don't have to. So I started out with no money. That was the conversation that I had with the guy that I partnered with, actually, he was like, what do you want to do? Or I don't know how we got into that conversation, but I was basically said, what I really want to do is be a real estate investor. I just don't have any money. Okay. He was like, well, I got money. I just don't have the time. So we formed a partnership where I did all the work and he put up all the money. And that is a very common thing, actually. It's a very common partnership. Lots of people do it that way. So you have one person who's a manager and one person who is an investor, or maybe multiple people who are investors, multiple people who are managers, but they form a partnership. So if you have the education and you have the skills and you know what to do, you don't necessarily have to have the money. But lots of people who are in that situation where they don't have the money also don't have the skills or the education. So you can start either with the money and then give it to somebody who has the education, or you can start with the education and then find somebody who's got the money.
So that's what you said. So you would definitely recommend, if you're first starting off getting into real estate and you don't have any money, getting educated first, and then how did you go about finding a partner though? Like it's not
was
like
just somebody I knew.
Yeah.
It was just somebody that I had worked with. They had seen my work ethic. This person had, we had worked together for a little while. So like, it wasn't like any like big to
process
do. It was just like,
anything.
Like, hey, I want to do this. Oh yeah, well, here, I got some money for you.
And he just took a chance.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it.
Huh.
So
okay,
I think that's a lot more common than people think. Like, if you have a good deal, especially if you know what you're doing, you're educated. At that point, I had been studying real estate. I didn't have that much experience other than like just one property. But I had been studying it for years. So like I had been like learning more and more and more over the years. And so, I think he felt confident enough that I knew what I was doing to go into it. So like that's probably the first step. If you really want to get into the game, then you got to learn how to play. That's the first step. You don't have to have money. You don't have to bring money to the table. You can, but you don't have to. You can, if you have the education, you can find the money.
So you weren't nervous about that, like playing the game with somebody else's money, so to speak?
Definitely was.
Yeah. So how do you overcome those obstacles? This is your first real estate endeavor. You're using someone else's OPM, other people's money. And this guy was like, all right, let's form this partnership together. I'm going to provide all the money. You do all the work.
Yep.
How do you feel? Like, how does that, you know what I'm saying? Like, why weren't you afraid? What were your first steps?
The first steps of starting that partnership?
Yeah, starting that partnership.
Just having the conversation was the first step. And then we wound up finding a deal, and the numbers made sense.
Yeah.
And we just took it from there.
Okay.
And then that one went well. So then there was a second one and
Well,
a
once you
third
did it
one.
one time,
Yeah.
rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So did your partner have any real estate experience beforehand? And did he help out at all in the process, or was it 100% you doing all the operational stuff?
He had some experience. He had actually owned a small mobile home park before that, and he had more experience than I did in that.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't do a lot with his mobile home park. So he would just, kind of had that sitting there.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, he did a lot of the work with like setting up financing with the banks and that kind of stuff. But he didn't do much, if any, of the work on the operational side or like management. Like that was all my, what I was there for, basically. That was my contribution to the business.
So he literally was the financial side, and you literally were the operation side.
Yep.
So what did the pay breakdown look like? Since you didn't have any experience, you had education, but it was still not proven, right? That you knew what you were doing. What did the payment break down? And did y'all have promissory notes? Did y'all have like a LLC? What does all that look like?
We had an LLC. And then what we did basically was we created an LLC, and we were both 50% owners.
Okay.
And then we worked out a deal where he got his money back on a quicker schedule, basically. So like I took less of a payment until he got his money back, and then we were 50-50 in cash flow disbursement, which is kind of like a preferred return, basically, is what it was. Yeah.
Now, when you were first getting into real estate, multifamily real estate, had you planned on getting a partner, or what was your individual plan, or were you like, how did you plan on raising money or acquiring money once you found a deal?
I don't think I really had a good plan for that side of it. So I just, we just talked about that situation, but I don't think I had a real good plan up front. Okay. So that's probably why it took me so long, because I was studying it for like 4 or 5 years, but I didn't really know like how to take the leap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anybody helping me with that. So it was just like, I was reading a lot of books, listening to podcasts, but I didn't really have a good
plan of action
to actually take
SOP.
the step.
So to speak to our fandom and newbies out there, you would recommend the same path, like, hey, find you someone that's willing to invest in you and into what you're trying to do, and go from there.
If you don't have the money, then I would say definitely find somebody who has that, but you got to convince them that you know what you're doing. So you have to learn the game first. You can't just jump in with somebody else's money and not know what you're doing. Then you're gonna lose it. You're gonna find a bad deal. You're gonna they're probably hopefully savvy enough that they're not gonna let you invest it in a bad deal, but a lot of people aren't. So like if they don't know the game either, then that's not good. But I think if you have the education up front, then start talking to people and letting them know. I went on a podcast a couple of years ago, and the guy asked me some question about this, and I was like, you have to just let people know what you want to do. Like you start telling people, you're gonna find a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about that too. Like, or hey, I got some money, like in a 401k or like in a somewhere that like I got my house paid for, maybe I can take a loan out and use that money. So there's lots of ways to do it.
So let me ask you this. So realistically, if someone was brand new and they wanted to get into multifamily real estate, how long from like the very first day, not having any education, will you think they need to allot for themselves before they can actually start really until they think they could acquire a property? So like how much education do you think they need? How long should that process take, type of thing? You know, and then finding a partner, so they can fund the deal and then actually find a deal. How far away are people right now from never doing real estate to acquiring their first property, like, type of thing?
It really depends on how you get the education. And we have this coaching program. If you went into something like that, probably a couple months, you're ready to make your first purchase, probably maybe less than that even. But if you do it the way that I did it, you just got to piece together books and podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a few years probably. So it depends. You can shortcut it by having a program or some kind of step-by-step process that you can follow, or maybe you find a mentor who can tell you exactly what to do, who's done it before. That will speed it up a lot.
I like that.
So if you've got that, then yeah, it won't take long. It'll take a couple months.
That's crazy. I bet most people wouldn't even think that. When you said a couple of months, it threw me off. I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, if you really said. So here's the thing: if you had $20,000-$30,000 and you want to be a real estate investor, the best thing you can do with that money is not try to find a deal or a property. It's to
That's right.
invest in your education first, is what you're saying.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. Alex Hormozy talks about this a lot. He was like, if you have a little bit of money,
Yeah.
you need to put all of that money back into self-education so that you can make more money, because there's no investment that's going to be there's no investment that's going to make more money than investing in yourself. So there's no better return on your investment than that.
Bet on yourself.
Yep. So you got to acquire skills and knowledge that are going to make you more money in the long run. So that's what we were talking about too a couple episodes ago, where, like people who are wealthy, the people who already are successful are the ones who pay the most for coaching, because they understand that that's the best investment they can make.
It's been reported that LeBron James spends over $1 million a year on his self-development every year, right? So massages, eating right, therapy, all kinds of stuff. He is the most one of the most athletically gifted people we've ever seen. And he invests in himself heavily still, because he understands in order to be the best version of himself, he has to keep pouring back into himself so he can keep betting on himself, right? Type of thing. Excuse me, I had what you had going on in that other episode. But that's really encouraging, to really think about it like that. That in a few months they can really. So the other thing I was thinking about also, another reason why that is so important to go ahead and invest in yourself up front, is because you said you kind of pieced your education together. Had you just spent $15,000-$20,000 in your own education 4 years prior to acquiring a property, you could have been making money a whole lot sooner and accrued a lot more money.
For sure.
And that time is valuable right there. So so some perspective. What year did you buy your first multifamily property?
2017.
So you back up 5 years, 2012. Remember what the market was doing back in 2012?
Oh my God.
Exactly. Right. Y'all do the math. Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
So the potential.
In 2017, I told you before, like I knew I had been talking to a real estate investor when I was caddying for him, and he was like, everything's too expensive right now.
Yeah,
so, it's 5 times more expensive now than it was then. So
I remember reading this post from this lady. She said, the biggest mistake I made in 2012 was not dropping out of 7th grade so I can invest in real estate.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I was like, yeah. So, and that's the thing.
That's actually really
that
good.
was so good.
That is good.
But so you're not only saving yourself a lot of time and heartache, and you're not losing money. There's so much potential gains you can be making by just fast tracking and just go ahead and doing it up front right now.
Yeah, that's right.
So long story short, if you had to do it all over, educate yourself up front.
Yep.
Find a partner. Get a game plan.
Yep.
All right. So tell me about this game plan, your strategy. How did it change from when you didn't have a game plan to, like, if you had to start over again now, how would your strategy or your SOP, what would that look like now?
So the first thing I would do, like I said, was get a coach, get a mentor, find somebody who's done it, figure out step-by-step process. But really, it's pretty simple. You got to find good deals, and then you got to figure out funding. You can do those things at the same time. You can start talking to people, start talking to other people that you know who might have money. You don't know if they do or not, but you can just start talking to people. Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my plan. This is how I'm learning. This is, once they understand what you're doing, like that you're serious about this whole process, that you're educating yourself and you're going to make smart choices, then if you find a good deal, people are going to be lined up to give you money. I think that's been the case in the last few years. It might not be that way forever, because as times get harder, money gets harder to find. Yeah. So like 2012 probably been a lot harder to find money, but all you need is one person or a couple of people who believe in what you're doing, and they have the money sitting around. Well,
let's talk about that real quick. How much money are we talking about? Because like I said, let's just say we're dealing with newbies. That could be, they might think 100,000, they might think $1 million. Like how much money would you realistically need to get into, and so I'm not holding you to this. I know it varies a lot.
It does vary a lot,
but what should we be looking at ballpark?
The way that I do it in the towns that I'm investing in, the markets that I'm looking at, the cash flow that I'm looking at, really, you don't need that much. The first deal I did was $75,000, and then
That's how much money you needed to
that's
bring.
how much money we needed to close it and
Okay.
get it going.
Okay.
So it's not a crazy amount, really. I mean, you probably know dozens of people who have that much money that you don't even know it.
I do. Yeah.
You
I
probably
don't even know it. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, probably.
You
Yeah.
probably do.
Yeah.
So there's
We all at.
there's it depends on what you're doing. You're probably not going after, when you're first starting out, you're probably not going after $50 million properties, unless you have really good connections. So I think if you're looking for high cash flow properties, you can get into these sort of smaller deals for pretty cheap, although they're a lot bigger deals than single family. We kind of talked about single versus multifamily. If you're looking at multifamily property, though, you don't need that much really to get started. But if you're looking in bigger cities at bigger deals, you might need a couple $1 million. It just depends. It really depends. A huge variation. But for me, when I first started, I started out with $75,000 investment from one person.
Okay. So all right. Let me ask you this a little bit slant on the same question. If you could do it all over again and you had $75,000, would you still try to find a partner to go in with you with, or would you invest your own money into the project?
That's a good question. It depends. I think if you want to build a big real estate company, you're gonna have to raise money. That's just you're gonna have to from somewhere. If you want to stay small, it really depends on the strategy. If you want to stay small, if you want to have less stress, and you want to not necessarily have a large company, but have enough cash flow to just cover small things, then you probably just do it yourself. It really depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Determines what kind of vehicle you need to kind of get into.
Yep.
Okay. I know Robert Kiyosaki, he's a big proponent of other people's money, and he has plenty of money in the bank. And I think he still uses other people's money for everything that he does, right? Because of that infinite return type of thing.
Well, it's definitely a thing. But like I was saying, if you have a small cash flow number, if you want to make $10,000 a month,
okay,
and that's all you need to make, and that's what your goal is, then. And you have $75,000 or $100,000 sitting around, you can probably make that investment and make $10,000 a month off of that, which is a huge cash on cash return. I understand, but I mean, you're probably going to be able to do that pretty easily if you've got good lenders. You're still using other people's money for that part, probably. But if you've got a few $100,000, a couple $100,000 maybe sitting around, and all you need is $10,000 a month, then I would take that. I'm not saying I'm not a financial advisor.
Disclaimer.
But what I would do is take that money out of whatever retirement account it's in, put it into the deals like we do. You probably need one deal, and you're making that money right away.
I don't know anyone alive that wouldn't benefit from making passively $10,000 a month extra or period, right? Like for most people, that's going to come for most people. For the vast majority of people that's listening and watching, that's going to cover all their bills and everything they need, and that's going to pretty much buy their freedom for most people.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. For most, I'm just saying.
I don't know that it's going to buy freedom. Maybe for most people.
We'll think about
if you want to be average.
Because listen, you rich now, so you don't even think to say, you know what I'm saying? This dude like, nah, $10,000, you broke. Come on, bro.
Well. It depends on what you want and where you live.
You know what I'm saying?
It depends. If you live in a small town like we do, then that's probably a good thing. But if you live in if you live in a larger city, you want to have. It depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to have.
Right. Well, let me ask you this then. So, follow up to just starting out and everything. What was the hardest part of the process about learning, acquiring, growing, like across the whole board of multifamily real estate? What was the hardest portion for you to learn or acquire? Like, was it the actual numbers portion? Was it the people? Was it what did you struggle with the most?
It's probably not the numbers. I think there's plenty of information out there. You can learn that stuff pretty easily, I think.
Yeah.
But really, you learn a lot of it through experience. You got to get out there and do it. So, for me, the management side, I learned a lot once I started doing it and got into situations where I had to figure out what to do. So just like most anything, you need to have a base of knowledge, but then you got to actually go out there and do it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. There's going to be so many things that you run into. This is another reason why a mentor is very important, or some people, a community of people who can help. Because no matter what you do, no matter how much you study, I studied for 5 years roughly before I got started. It doesn't matter, because you're going to run into situations that you haven't thought of, that you don't know how to solve. You got to figure out what to do, and all of this stuff is time sensitive in some degree. So you got to figure out, like, what you're going to do, how you're going to solve the problem, and sometimes there's a playbook and sometimes there's not. So like, the numbers part of it was, to me, simple. It was a lot simpler than any other business I had done. It was pretty straightforward. You know what the rents are in a market. You pretty much know what it's going to cost to rent a property, and you know what your loan payment is. Like that, those numbers to me are very easy. They're very simple. It's not like trying to forecast sales in a company. And you really don't know, and
margins and all that stuff. Product,
right. That's a lot harder. So I think real estate, the numbers are easy. The hard part is like figuring out the operation side of it, I think, for me. At least. So.
Well, right now, when it comes to real estate, multifamily, teams, and maintenance, everything that it involves, what areas right now do you still continue to work on to make yourself better?
All of it.
All of it?
Yeah. You're always getting better at all of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even like the spreadsheets that I use, the deal calculators or whatever, all of that stuff I'm continually updating it.
So you still go to seminars and still and everything.
I'm still always trying to learn more. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you need to always be a student of this, and I think that's
anything in life.
I was about to say that's the biggest. I think that should be one of the strongest prerequisites of doing anything, but especially in real estate. I think a lot of people treat real estate, rental properties and stuff as a side gig or a hustle.
That is a good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so it's like, especially if your entry point is like wholesaling. I never forget, I was talking with so this is how I was introduced to wholesaling.
Okay.
This guy, my buddy Mike, was like, "Hey man, I know you can do it. It's easy. I'm gonna teach you the game, all this stuff like that." All right, cool. I was like, "You sure I can do it, man? Because I don't even know what wholesaling a house means. That sounds crazy, And he was like, "Man, he said, I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale. We have people that's in my class. This one guy, he's blind and in a wheelchair. He wholesale. He did a sale. These other people that I was like, and this one kid, he's 18. He just all this stuff."
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna get into it. And there was some people that I met living in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. They was treated like a straight up side gig and hustle, depending on what type of life they want to live for that season. They was like, all right, man, we got this festival coming up. I'm gonna need about $30,000. Let's go out here and sell a couple of houses. And then they would do it and it would be done. That's not a business. That's a hustle. That's a gig. That's a type of thing. But
you don't want to do that with rental property, because you're going to run into lots of stuff.
Absolutely.
And you're right. A lot of people buy one house, they get one property, and they're like, "Oh, I got a rental."
Yeah.
And then they get burnt out because they have a tenant trashes the house and moves out, and now it's vacant for 3 months, and they got no money coming in,
and it's costing.
And they got to
money.
pay tens of thousands of dollars for somebody to come in and repair it. That's one of the reasons I like multifamily better, because the more property you have, the easier it becomes. And so
sounds counter. What do you mean by that? Like,
well, you have economies of scale. You can build teams. Vacancy doesn't hurt you as much, because if you got 100 units and 10 people are out, that's a 10% vacancy. That's not going to kill you. But if you got one property and one person leaves,
that's 100% vacancy.
And that's going to happen every 16, 18 months probably. So like, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of people who get in, they got one property, and they're like, I need to get a rental property so I can make some extra money. That is not a good side gig. You need to treat it like a business, and you need to make sure that you are running it like a business the whole time. And you need to be growing, or you need to get it to a certain point where it can sustain itself. And one or two does not. So if you've got, but you buy a community that's got 30, 40, 50 units, then, 2 or 3 people move out, it's not going to kill you.
Right.
And that's going to happen. It's going to happen every few months. You're going to have people leave, or every year, if you've got a house, maybe 1 or 2, 3, couple of years, whatever, you're going to wind up with some vacancy. And so anyway, the bigger you have it, the less stressful it is because you got people who can do the work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, multiple people on a team who can handle situations that come up.
Mm-hmm.
So first starting out is the hardest when you've only got a few units, because you got to figure out how to fix these issues.
Yeah.
Got to figure out problems. There's always going to be problems. So you got to figure out how to handle that stuff without a huge team in place.
So what do you say to the newbie that is like, okay, obviously I would want to start off with a multifamily property, but isn't it easier to get a handful of single family properties? Is it easier to get into single family than it is to get into multifamily?
I don't think so. Well, I don't think it's easier to build a decent amount of cash flow from single family versus multifamily. There's a lot of reasons I like multifamily better. One of them is depending on the deal, depending on the lender, it might be a little bit easier to get into multifamily than single family, depending on your situation, your credit, how much money you have, all that kind of stuff.
Qualifications.
Yeah.
Stuff for it.
It seems to me, at least, that banks like bigger deals because they're making more money. And also, if they have to get this property back, it's a little bit more attractive. It's a little bit easier for them to handle and get rid of. Just like it's easier for me if I've got 100 units than one. It's the same thing for the bank. They don't want to own that house. So, like, they got to go through a whole process. So, anyway, I think it's a little bit easier probably to build. It may not be easier to get started, but it's definitely easier to build a decent amount of cash flow from multifamily than single family, in my opinion.
It makes sense.
So, yeah. And a couple other reasons I like multifamily better. So, one is that you have control of the value of the property to an extent because the property value is based on income and not on comparable sales like a house. So, like, if I buy a house in a neighborhood and then, something happens with this neighborhood and, this house sells for a little bit less and this house sells for a little bit less. Now my house is less valuable and I didn't do anything to make it less valuable.
Comparables. Yeah.
But in a multifamily property, if I come in and get the rents up to market rents, fix up the property, get a little bit better rent for them, have a little bit less expenses because I've put in some money so that I don't have to do as much maintenance, or maybe I've filled vacancies that were there before by being a little bit more efficient with marketing and getting people in the property, or maybe I've set up systems where the property's running a little bit more efficiently. Whatever it is, my income gets a little bit better. Not only do I make more money, but now the property's worth a whole lot more too. So, and it's oh God, I just hit myself in the mouth with the microphone. Golly.
You good?
I'm good. I have to be down for the 8 count. Speaking of down, look at this.
You want some water?
I'm good.
The whole peanut gallery's asleep.
Anyway, yeah. What was I talking about before I did that? No, I'm all
I think
distracted.
you're talking about Mayweather and
Floyd, yeah.
Pacquiao.
Yeah.
No, you're talking about multifamily being better to get into.
Yeah,
because expenses.
Another reason is you control the whole neighborhood to an extent.
Yeah.
Like if you have a mobile home park or you have an apartment complex, you still have to look at what part of town, what part of the city that's in. But like, I've bought some really rough properties, but because I had the whole property, I could come in and get the riffraff out, fix stuff up, make it look nicer, clean it up, and then get better tenants in.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to deal with all that kind of stuff. And the houses, right next door don't really affect that as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still, you still have to look at where it is, right? You still have to make sure you're in a good market. But, I was able to take property that was in really bad shape, fix it up, and not have to worry about the one next door. But I've got single family that I help my parents manage right now, and it's in this little community, and it's a decent little area. You drive in, everything looks nice. You get to the house, and you look across the street, and the house across the street is like literally probably needs to be condemned. It's so nasty. There's no front door. There's like a piece of plywood up over the front door.
That sounds like
there's like a bunch of big, like, aggressive dogs running around in the yard. Fence is all torn up. So like it looks nasty over there. And so like I can't do anything about that right there. Can't do anything about that one house that's bringing down the value of my property, making it harder to rent, So like that's the kind of thing that I don't like about single family. One of the things. But like with multifamily, I own the whole community. now I can make this community nicer.
The whole culture.
Yeah.
And everything. So do you just stay away from single family altogether?
For the most part, I will buy a single family property if the deal is right and it's in a market where I already own multifamily and I have a team in place and they.
Oh yeah.
So like I had one single family property in this portfolio that I just sold, and actually it didn't go in that portfolio, but I did sell it. But yeah, it was in the same market where I had 135 other units. And so it was really easy to just plug it in, and I actually made money on buying that house. I got paid $20,000 to buy the house, so like I didn't have to come out of pocket. It was like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I see that. So you just essentially treated it like another door in the whole thing because
it just plugged right into my management system, maintenance people, everything was right there. So
you probably in your mind and in your personal stuff included that whenever it was vacant, you included it in the whole vacancy rate, whole vacancy rate instead of just that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
That was the downside still is neighbors could mess that up. But in this situation, it was kind of had 2 acres. It was kind of like you couldn't see the neighbors at all. So like, you could still get into some issues with bad neighbors. But for the most part, the other things that I don't like about single family were kind of taken away because I had all this other property in that area.
So if you're going to buy a single family home, the situation has to be very ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not usually looking for single family.
Right. Right.
And so if it fits into what I'm already doing, I would do it. But I wouldn't go, like, if that was my first deal, I wouldn't do it. And if it was like in my first deal in the new market, I wouldn't do that. So, but if I own if I already have systems in place, I've already got stuff there and the deal is just really, really good, then okay, I would do it.
So to speak to the newbie, and some of the comments that, some of the questions that we were asked, I think you answered those very thoroughly. You don't need you need very little, if any, money to get started. But what you do need is education, right?
Yes.
All right.
You do need that.
It would be great to have a coach or a mentor, someone that's done it, that has experience, that can kind of show you the ropes, show you the game, help fast track, right? Along with the education that you have, the experience and the guidance. You do need a game plan, right? You got to have a direction. You don't get in the car and just drive without having a destination. Right.
Yeah.
That reminds me of an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer was one of my favorite characters. Did you ever watch Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Kramer, he and I can't remember who he was with. They decided they were just going to drive until the car ran out of gas, or it was something like that. So they got to their destination. They were trying to drive somewhere without getting gas. They got to their destination. They was like, "All right, well, what do we do now?" And they was like, "You know what? Let's just keep going." They was just like, like, what are you, so, but essentially that's what, if we don't have a game plan, like you said, you didn't really have a strategy. And that's probably part of the reason why it took you so long to actually get into it. That's and you lost a lot of potential money during that time, looking at it retrospectively, because you didn't have a clear destination. So education, destination, and I need another word that kind of rhymes with that.
I don't know.
No procrastination. I don't know. Anyway, cool.
There you go.
I like that though. But and just one more time, the emphasis that you're putting on having a coach or a mentor.
Yeah, it's not because I have a program for that. It doesn't matter if it's us, but if you're going to start any new endeavor, like my son just started playing golf. Yeah. And I could take him out there. What if I just took him out there and left him with some golf clubs? Yeah. He would hate golf because it's very difficult to start. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not fun. Like when I first started, I didn't like it at all until this old guy. I was at the driving range. We used to have a driving range here, just a driving range.
Yeah, back in the day.
And I was up there. I might have been with a friend or something. I think I was, because I probably wouldn't have gone by myself. But I went up there with him, and like this old dude came up and he's like, "Man, you're doing it all wrong." He's like, "Son, you're doing it all wrong."
Right.
I was like, "Okay, what could I do?" So he showed me a couple things, and then I hit a ball straight, and I was like, "Oh, that's what it's supposed to be like." And then I was hooked, and then I went and got a lesson from a coach, and then I started getting better and better, and then I really enjoyed it. And so that's like, it's the same thing. Like if you go out and try to learn it yourself, you're going to have a lot of bumps and bruises. Yeah. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, might lose some money. Yeah. It's not going to be fun. And there's so many, I know so many. I talk to these people almost every day, it seems like. Anytime I'm looking at deals, I'm always talking to people at our store. Like there's always somebody coming in. There was a guy in there yesterday. I think I was up there the day before. And whenever it was, last time I was up there. this guy came in and guy that was there talking to him about some products. We were ringing him up, whatever, and I walked out, just kind of heard him talking about rentals and walked out there. And I was like, oh, yeah, you got some rental properties? He's like, well, I got one. It's probably going to be my last one. Because he was in there trying to fix something the tenant did, and it was so stressful. He didn't know what he was doing. Like, that's how it is if you don't have a coach. But if you get somebody, you get a coach. My son, his first introduction to the game of golf was a lesson. So he went in, the coach told him how to hold the club, how to stand, how to kind of swing through, just basic stuff. And he's like, all right, hit the ball. And then he started hitting it. And then on our way out of there, he's like, golf is my favorite sport. Yeah. It's the first time he's ever played. So but he loved it because he was able to kind of figure out the basics a little bit, right? Get a little bit better, see some improvement. So now I try to take him out there every weekend, let him go out and play, and then we can continue the lessons, So bro, I think that really kind of is, it's such an important thing. If you want to learn a new skill, you need somebody who's done it before, somebody who already understands it to show you how to do it.
I got that same experience with when I first ate blue crabs. Right? So I can't tell you how many friends that I have.
How many, did you get a blue crab coach?
Pretty much, yeah. Like all my uncles and them.
All my uncles.
Yeah, they know how to eat. And you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at them because we're all thin. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends that they was like, oh, it's too much work, and I don't eat the butter, and dead man and all this stuff. I'm just like, what? Are you kidding me, bro? So my introduction to it was at a Low Country Boil. Yeah. First of all, I don't know if it's boil or broil.
It's a boil.
It's a boil.
Yeah, but if you live with where we live, then it's bowl.
Bowl.
Yeah.
All right. Low Country Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low Country Bowl. All right. You just said fast enough so people don't really. Yeah, that's what I said. But Low Country Bowl, we had the good music playing. You make me happy. All the good summertime stuff, and had the shrimp, the eggs, the sausage,
they poured
potatoes,
out on the table with the newspapers.
There you go. Picnic table, newspaper, all that stuff. And so then got this crab in front of me, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna show you how to eat this.
I don't think that white people have crabs in their Low Country Bowl, but go ahead.
Really? Hold on. We gotta pause for station identification. Sausage. What do y'all have?
Shrimp and sausage.
Well, no.
Meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. So with y'all's shrimp, do you eat blue crabs?
I love blue crabs.
Okay.
But I've never had one in a country bowl though.
Really?
Low Country Bowl. Yeah.
They go hand in hand. You got corn in there too?
Corn, potatoes, onions.
Okay.
I don't think I've actually ever cooked one, but I've also never eaten one with.
Listen,
crabs.
my first time. So you never cooked the crab? Never steamed, boiled it?
Yeah,
okay.
When I lived out by the marsh, I used to go out there with crab traps and catch them and boil
and bring them in. I remember my first time doing that. That's the scariest.
While they're alive, you gotta get.
So I remember when I was young at my grandma's house, they would always come with this brown paper bag, like that's supposed to keep the crabs in. Like they got pinchers and you know what I'm saying? Like a brown paper bag. So I don't know. It's like anyway, I don't know. The most valuable things always came in the brown paper bag to them. It was like liquor and crabs. And they go, let me tell you this one story real quick about liquor. This same uncle that taught me how to eat blue crabs and introduced me to greens, collard greens, my favorite food of all time.
Yeah.
He messed around and got drunk one day, right? He came in the house. He was like, hey, we're gonna roast some pecans. I was like, okay. So this dude comes in the house and he turns on the oven super high, salt and pepper, throw them on the thing. And he was like, we're gonna make some French fries too. Get some potatoes. We cutting them up, and then he got potatoes on the stove and pecans in the oven. He goes in the bathroom and goes to sleep. Right? I'm just like,
that sounds like you in the sink.
Where you think I get it from? Anyway, so at my grandma's house, and they was like, all right, D, we're gonna let you put one of these crabs in the pot. Okay, cool. So I'm all scared because I'm all nervous. And these things, I was like, they still alive? They were like, yeah, D. I was like, oh. So we got the little tongs, and I'm all like finicky, and then drop one on the ground. That thing was fighting for its life, running around. I'm surprised they didn't get traumatized. Anyway, I don't know how we got started talking about blue crabs, but what I was trying to say was
your blue crab coach.
So then he showed me how to eat it, and it was a good association. The process I enjoyed. The payoff was worth it to me. Yeah. And because I didn't have to struggle, and I knew what I was doing, knew what I was looking for, and I enjoyed it, and I was able to eat the fruit of the labor.
That's funny because I know a lot of people who don't like crab legs because it's such a hard thing to do. But for me, it's not, because I grew up, my wife is over there. She said she didn't. That's how she feels.
What?
And I think I just showed her for the first time, like a month ago.
Talking about snow crab legs?
Yeah, how to peel and open crab legs.
Isn't it glorious though?
Like
when you
it's one of my favorite foods, and I don't even mind. I can sit there all day and just crack them.
I can eat crabs all day.
Yeah, me too.
So I do like the snow crab legs, like because the meat.
Yeah.
And
I never had king crab legs either.
Those are just a lot bigger, But yeah, so my introduction to it, I had a good coach in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's the same.
It is important.
You have to build a good association. You have to be with someone that knows what they're doing because you can tell right off,
If I was getting started, actually, that's probably what I would do. If I was first starting out, the first thing I would do is find somebody who already is doing that.
What you're trying to do.
Yep, and go and talk to them and maybe even like work for them, figure out how to bring them some value and then learn the game from somebody who's already playing.
Yeah. That's it right there. Yeah. As you're also learning.
Yeah,
and
that's what you did when you came to Jessup.
That was it. That was my whole goal.
You came in and said, "Hey, I'll manage the property, and in probably about a year or so, I'm gonna go out on my own and do this stuff myself. I want to learn."
Yeah,
and that's a good way to do it.
And that's what it was because you were doing it, and I was in it. I inundated myself. It's like learning a new language. They say it's best to go to that country, surrounded by it. You learn the language, and that's so. I think it's the best. If you can do it, do it. Especially if you're young right now. If you're in your 20s, if you're single. Or if you have a little bit of time and leverage to kind of do that, just immerse yourself in the culture of it and take it outside of being a hobby and a hustle and make it a business. Make it your business to make it a business because it's going to pay dividends in the end. It's the fruit is worth the labor. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I said this, and I was telling him, when he and I were growing up, me and his friend, we played sports together at the boys' club in middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. And when you have kids, especially when fathers have sons, they want their kids to follow in their footsteps, And sometimes they just do different things. And I was telling him that my son was not into some of the same stuff that I was into. And he said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "There's always going to be a blossom. It might blossom into something different, but all you can do is keep watering and keep nurturing, and then it'll bloom and do what it needs to do or whatever."
Yeah.
So I think as long as we keep watering and investing in ourselves, we will blossom in time, but invest in yourself now while you can. Especially when you're in obscurity, when you're young and you're single. Yeah. Even if you have kids and stuff like that, just find time to invest in yourself and make time for yourself. So, anyway, good stuff, man.
Awesome.
All right, I'll catch you next time.
That's it.
Yep.